The customers that we have the most success with are the ones where the data-driven mindset is just baked into the organization. That's why we want to keep the price point low, is so that you're not overthinking testing. It should be something like, oh, well, we've got a decision. We're already debating it. Let's just go throw it up on PickFu, go grab a coffee. We'll come back. Like, the answer's there.
Welcome to the Day 2 podcast. Today's episode, Seeking the Wisdom of the Crowd with Justin Chen of PickFu. I'm Jason Boyce, founder and CEO of Avenue 7 Media, co-author of The Amazon Jungle, now available on Audible, and host of the Day 2 podcast. Today's guest, Justin Chen, along with his co-founder, John Lee, and the crack team at PickFu, is on a mission to democratize consumer research so that anyone and everyone can make better data-driven decisions. PickFu provides customer research services to a wide range of customers, from New York Times best-selling authors to the largest video game companies to the full range of CPG and Amazon FBA businesses. Justin, it was great to see you at Sell and Scale Summit in Las Vegas. Great to spend time with you and John at the show. And thanks for joining us here on the podcast. How are you today?
Good. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Jason. It was great meeting you guys in person too. Really excited to be here.
Yeah. You know, my co-host on the show, Shannon Roddy, he's been singing your guys' praises, and I'm just amazed at the work that, you know, your SaaS group is and your market research team is doing for our creative team. So I really appreciate it. Awesome. Justin, I want to get us started by I want our audience to learn a little bit about you. How did you get mixed up in this game? How did you get mixed up with Amazon? Tell us a little bit about your story and your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. So my co-founder, John, and I, we're both engineers by trade. We met in college learning computer science. And so we actually built PickFu as a side project a long time ago, like over a decade ago. We were running a different web business, and we built this as a side project to gather feedback. We were engineers. We're like, let's just build a tool to scratch our own itch. As entrepreneurs, you probably know that you ask your friends and family for advice and feedback all the time. But eventually they start getting tired of giving feedback. And they're just like, oh, whatever, you know, whatever's best. And like, they're not that useful at a certain point. And in the end, they're not even your target audience. They're biased. Like, you know, they're just being nice to you sometimes. So the same kind of goes with your coworkers and teammates. And so we really wanted to build something that got out of our own heads, kind of like that coffee shop test. Like, if you were to walk out to a bunch of strangers or go to a coffee shop, hey, what do you think about this? Give me your unbiased feedback. You're a stranger. Like, you have no skin in the game. And so what's the digital version of that? And that's kind of where PickFu came from. Could we get 50 people, internet strangers who, have no skin in whether it succeeds or not, to give us feedback on something? So that's where it kind of came from. We kind of threw it up on the internet to see if people were interested in it, put a PayPal button on it a long time ago. That's what everyone used.
Nice.
And, like, the startup community started using it, and it was like, cool, that's nice. And we just kind of left it there for a while. We started getting a lot of self-publishing authors use it. This was kind of around the Tim Ferriss time, where he was talking about how he used ads to test his book titles and everything. And so people started to get more data-driven with how we're going to pick things like book titles and book covers. And so PickFu kind of fit naturally into that. And so we started getting a lot of book marketers talking about how you should be data-driven about your titles and covers. And as a self-publishing author, you don't have the benefit of a publisher and an editor to give you advice on these things. So you're kind of on your own. That's kind of where we got started. A lot of authors using us. Some game companies started using us to test things. And eventually, I think it was back in 2019, e-commerce kind of found us when Manny Coates mentioned us on the AMPM podcast. We started getting all these FBA sellers coming in. We had no idea like what this industry was. Super fascinating. And we discovered that there's a lot of opportunity to help e-commerce sellers in general, because you're making important decisions all the time, thousands of dollars on the line, and we can actually help you make more money, de-risk inventory, all those kinds of things. So the use cases really made sense. And so we started leaning much harder into e-commerce and Amazon in specific, just because there's so much opportunity to do data-driven iteration there. So that's kind of where it takes us today. About 3 years ago, we started growing the team and just really expanding the platform. So we're really excited about being able to, like you said, democratize consumer research for anyone who's running a business, because I don't think people realize that it is this easy to gather feedback from your target audience, and you don't have to fly blind when making these kinds of decisions.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. It's ridiculously easy.
Yeah.
It almost feels like you're doing something wrong because it's so simple to get really good data. And I want to go back to you being an engineering student. And I think we when we were talking offline, you'd mentioned that you had several entrepreneurial
Yeah.
companies, and this was, like you said, this was kind of a side fun project. What were some of those other businesses that you were involved in, and what was the moment when you said, you know what, this little crazy PickFu idea thing's got legs. Why don't we double down on it?
Yeah, sure. So like the first business we started with was a restaurant review menu aggregator. It was called Menuism. Um,
Menuism, great
Yeah,
name.
it was back in 2006. We self-funded it, going up against the funded, City Search and Yelps, and
Yeah.
very crowded space, a lot of money in there. But we kind of carved out our own niche of Google search traffic, and it was monetized with ads, and so it was a fantastic learning experience. That was actually the site we were working on a redesign for when we
Mhm.
built PickFu. Another business that we built was called the Wedding Lens, and this was before group photo sharing was really doable. And I was getting married, and so John and I built a wedding photo sharing website where brides can come on and create an album where all the people could upload photo albums. So that
Wow.
was something that we ran for a while, but we've since shut it down since photo sharing is kind of solved for the most part. But they've each business has been a great learning experience for the next. And as PickFu kind of evolved alongside all of those businesses, we've been taking best practices from everything we've learned and kind of incorporating that into PickFu.
Sure. That's great. I guess I didn't realize that you'd done all those with John, your co-founder.
Yeah, yeah.
So you guys have
It's
been on this
ADD,
journey together
just
since
different
college.
business ideas and
Oh, that's great. That's
yeah,
great to have, such a great partner by your side going through all these things. It's hard to do these things alone.
for
I
sure,
can
for
I can
sure.
speak to that.
A lot of ups
Yeah.
and downs, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so, okay, so you have all these other businesses. Any exits in there, or you just closed some down, or you sold
We
them,
closed them
or
down. Menuism actually continues to run to this
really?
day. It
It's
just
still
kind of
running.
just runs on its own. I mean, that's the beauty of code, and it's
Nice.
got Google search traffic and ads on it, and so that kind of just runs on its own. Yeah, we've always taken the self-funded, just want to build a portfolio of different businesses, and so that's kind of where it came from to try to build all these different businesses alongside each other. But
Right.
yeah, so I guess to your question, it was probably around 2018, 2019 when we decided to pivot full time. I think PickFu was starting to show really good growth year over year. And the feedback from customers was actually what really put it over the edge because every interaction we had was just so positive. Everyone kept saying, "Oh my God, like this is a godsend. Like I would have chosen." The most common feedback is, "I totally didn't think the one that won. I thought it was going to be the other one." And so it was helping people make decisions that were contrary to their own guts, and
Yeah.
it was helping them be higher performers. So it was just so satisfying helping authors and game companies, and then eventually e-commerce sellers. So we decided that let's go full time on PickFu and really grow out the team, because as we started thinking about it, the opportunity for democratizing consumer research for everyone
Yeah.
globally is just too hard to pass up that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. My co-author to the Amazon Jungle, Rick Cesare, and we like to bag on focus groups all the time. Like we make fun of them, right? And one of the reasons is, well, Rick's had a lot of experience. He's had billion-dollar brand launches, and he used to see the focus group market data from companies like Johnson and Johnson, and nothing really did as good as him going out and finding people who have already purchased the product. And so through college, I would go and do these focus groups here in LA, and they would ask me to go watch a show that in a million years I never would sign up to watch. And they
Yep.
would ask me for my opinion, and I didn't like the show, so it wasn't good data. So, but I have to say, PickFu has made me a believer that this is even better. It's sort of an interim step between
Yeah.
zero data and a focus group that won't work, and really getting a group of customers who've purchased your product already. So it's really great. Let me ask you this. what are some I'm not asking you to give away any secret sauce anywhere here, but how is it that you guys identify the right kind of audience that you know or you feel will be interested in what I have to present?
Yeah, I mean, I think getting this magical combination is a combination of both that right audience and asking the right questions. On our side, we put a lot of effort into screening and just really curating a audience that is genuinely trying to get feedback. So we have a number of steps to kind of put them through some tests and probation to make sure that they're
Oh, great.
actually giving good feedback. We have a couple systems in place, both automated using machine learning, kind of gauging their written responses and how they're answering to make sure that they're passing those automated tests. And then we have some human curation as well that kind of go through and make sure that their written responses are showing good intent. And that's kind of the benefit of asking for those written explanations as opposed to
Right.
just clicking, is that you can
Right.
actually read what, well, did you actually see what we're talking about? So that's kind of how we keep the quality high. But then you still need to ask the right questions, right? Like if you just say which one looks better, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you might get some good data, but if you can put a little bit of context in that, and maybe they aren't your target buyer, but if you say like if you were buying dog food, if you were searching to buy dog food on Amazon, which one would you buy? Well, okay, well maybe I don't have a dog. I mean, we have dog targeting, but maybe I
Okay, good.
don't have a dog. But at least like let me think about it. Okay, so if I have a dog, like maybe I'm more concerned about like, what's inside the food or this or that or whatever it is. But that's a little bit better question, just which one looks better, because then they're just going by the straight appeal of the packaging.
Right, right, right. I want to take a step back for a second. You mentioned 2018, 2019. You're like, this thing's got legs. We're gonna run with PickFu. Had you done any other market research? Had you seen anything like it? Were you guys first to market in this space, or did you see something and you're like, yeah, that's like $200,000 a year. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, so it's funny because we didn't come from market research, but as we started to understand what we had built, we then started researching like the other options in the space. And like you said, there are a lot of options that larger CPG companies, of course, are doing. We actually contracted with a few consultants from that space to really understand what the process was for larger companies to conduct these kinds of studies. And so it became really understanding that and then trying to converge the best practices of this large, market research space, which involves a lot of consultants, a lot of stringing together data from different panels and data quality, pruning and analyzing the data. Okay, well, how can we get that down to a 80-20 rule, right? Like simple enough, quick enough, and targeted to specific use cases, right? Because part of the reason that process is so complicating is because they have to handle every type of question. And, I want to do like a 20 question survey that asks all these different things. Well, if someone's just trying to get feedback on a main image or
Yeah,
the feedback on
it's
copy,
not complicated. You
we're
either like it or you
constraining a
don't.
lot of things. Like the more
Yeah,
that we can constrain, then the
right.
more that we can string together and automate and like provide like a little package that provides 80% of the value as some custom solution that a market research consultant might do. So yeah, we didn't come from that background, but it was very interesting analyzing those custom solutions and trying to like bring them down to everyone else.
Yeah, it's great. It's like, again, it's elegant, it's simple, and you get right to the point. And I do also love the written comments. It's not
Hmm.
just a star rating, because sometimes you'll read a comment and something in the comment says, okay, this customer doesn't get
Yes.
this product. So you can negate it, or
Hmm.
you can go back to your creative team and say, hey, this customer seems like maybe they would like this product, but they're not understanding it. We need to do a better job. We need to do a better job with packaging. We need to do a better job with main image,
Exactly.
messaging, whatever that might be. So I do love that. And your use case that you gave about the books was brilliant. I actually wish I would have used it for my book to test titles and designs. What are some things that game developers, what kind of things do they test? And then we'll move into what sort of an e-commerce or an Amazon seller would test.
Yeah, sure. So it's actually kind of similar because if you think about the product development and launch process,
Yeah.
there's a lot of similar stages. So they use it in the very beginning when they're testing storyboard sketches, character design,
Ah,
branding,
wow.
naming, all that kind of stuff, right? Because you're going to invest a ton of effort, design and development into these assets, well, you should get some feedback. Maybe you're going to have like a male paladin avatar or something like that. Okay, well, what design should we have? Should he have like a giant sword? Should he have an axe? Like whatever it is. Like there's a lot of
So
directions
they'll
that you
place
could go.
different character. They'll put
Yeah,
the same character up with different looks and find out
yeah.
which the audience
Or
likes
or
more.
even come up with a different character and say like, well, what would this demographic choose? What would this demographic choose? Because a lot of times games want to target a lot of different people, and they're all going to have
Right.
different preferences. So, there's a lot of data you can gather to make sure that you're going to put like the 5 characters to choose from, and
Yeah.
those are all going to resonate with some segment of the population. So
Fascinating.
there's that kind of stuff. There's testing game UX and even gameplay. Like we've had some people test animated GIFs where they're like, should he skip? Should he walk? Should he run? And just like showing the player movement and just
Wow.
getting down to like that kind of stuff is super fascinating to see. Then on the marketing side, it's the same stuff. App Store optimization is just like Amazon. You're testing your app icons, your
Yeah.
titles, your screenshots, like all that kind of stuff. Ads, creatives. We had people test Super Bowl commercials. So it's super
Wow.
fascinating, super fascinating to see. But it parallels a lot of what happens in the physical product world with e-commerce and retail.
It's great. And like in the old days, I used to use Amazon as my test bed. I would come up with a product that I thought was good enough. I'd throw it up there
Great.
and then hope, it was a hope strategy. I would hope for the best.
Yeah.
And then I'd start reading real written reviews that came through. And then the next time I reordered, I would fix it or I'd reiterate it or I'd fine tune it. And then over time, but that game doesn't work so well anymore
Hmm.
because you just don't want to be saddled with all those bad reviews from the first iteration. And
Yeah.
you know, I, I've supported product developers using Reddit to get some feedback from a very specific group. I know we've got a lot of clients who launch brand new products and ideas on Kickstarter so they can get some initial feedback. But how can those folks use PickFu, not just about your listing or your main image testing, which we'll talk about that in a minute. You can technically do that in Amazon now,
Yeah.
but what's the range of things that an e-commerce seller I've got a product idea to let's list this thing. What are some of the things that you could test through PickFu?
Definitely, as you're ideating concepts for products, there's a lot of different types of tests that you could run. Perhaps you're going after a certain category. You can you can test your idea against your top competitors to see if you're going to be competitive. One of the
Oh,
customers,
interesting.
yeah, one of the customers that we
Very
talked to actually
interesting.
at Sell and Scale runs a ton of different products and has all these ideas. Of course, like we all have ideas for what to sell. And so what he does is he has his team test out his hypothetical product and listing against his competitors. So not only is it the main image, but it's kind of the screenshot of here's the product, here's the price we're going to go at, here's the title we're going to go out at. And if I put that up against like these top 3 ones, which one are you going to click on and tell me why? And if he can't even win in this hypothetical search result scenario, he doesn't even attempt to go down that product. And so,
So smart.
yeah, so that's a great way to do it. Um, and then also just we've seen a lot of
So
3D renders.
just 1 second, if I could ask you a follow-up question on that one, Justin, because it's fascinating. And that cost him roughly ballpark.
I mean, maybe a couple $100 if he's just iterating on a couple tests, work with his designer to mock up some stuff. Yeah, like you've
Let me
risked
tell you,
nothing, really.
I've lost a couple $100,000 on an ocean container before. I wish back in the day when I was doing a lot of that
Yeah.
that PickFu was around because that would have saved a lot of money. That is a
Yep.
great use case. Test what you're thinking against top selling competitors right now and see if it competes. That's
Exactly.
brilliant. Okay,
Yeah.
I interrupted you. You had a flow there. I apologize. Can you continue on in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah.
what
I
are some
mean,
other
I
use
kind
cases?
of along that flow though. I mean, you always want some kind of variation, right? If you're trying to compete in
Yeah.
a certain space, so maybe you decide that your teapot has like a different kind of handle or whatever it is. So maybe you're iterating with your 3D designer and you're just testing out different designs, trying to get to a local maxima of your own design, and then of course retest it against competitors. Or you could even do kind of like traditional focus groupy tests where you say, hey, you're going to buy a teapot. What are the features that are important to you? And just gathering that kind of open-ended feedback will help you prioritize it. Oh, okay, well, they seem to really care about this. Like let's focus on that for our design, and then test it, validate it when you actually do the design. So there's a lot of feedback that you can gather in this ideation phase. Maybe you're just sourcing something off Alibaba and you want to test out different concepts. Like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to choose the photo from this one, and just I'm going to see which one people like. Maybe it's color variations. That's a really popular one because you've got to figure out some ratio to stock. It's probably not all of the colors, but
Yeah.
gather some feedback and
Yeah.
see what the top 2 or 3 are, and go with that for at least your first run, right? Because then you're not risking as much.
That's great. And I love on your website, you have ideation, design, development, launch. I'd like to propose another one, reoptimization, right? So,
Yes,
and not
going
just the
back.
product, the
Yep.
packaging, the listing, because here at F7, we like to say we optimize relentlessly and forever because that's really so important to the e-commerce game, keeping things fresh, updating it. You constantly got competitors coming in.
Yes.
So not only is it great to help you ideate, design, develop, and launch, but then after that, coming back with ideas to re-optimize. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. One of
It
our
gets a
big
little
case
wordy
studies.
on your website, though. We don't have to put it on the website, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, one of the case studies that we highlight is Thrasio rebranding their Angry Orange pet deodorizer, and that was it. That was
Yeah.
a rebrand. Like, okay, we've already got a successful brand. It can
Yep.
probably do better. Let's go back to the packaging design and redesign it. But it's going to cost a lot to not only do this redesign, you've got to retool the packaging and everything. So I
Yeah.
think they were saying that it was going to be a $50,000 investment to adjust how they were going to do packaging. So how do you de-risk that? And that was through testing the designs against on PickFu and then choosing the best one, knowing
Right.
that it was going to perform better. And so that's the design they've been using for the past few years, and it's been a phenomenal success for them. And
Huge
so yeah,
success.
that's a great example of going back, even though you might have something that's succeeding, maybe it's not
Yeah.
succeeding, but
Yeah.
kind of starting back over with the packaging and the branding and all that kind of design.
That's great. That's great. There's one other use case I want to share with you. We've had some internal fights over here about which direction we should go, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like you guys could put also therapist on there because the great thing if you got, especially if you've got co-founders or anything like that, and one has a very strong
Yes.
opinion about this, it's great to put it on PickFu and then let the data decide if folks can, set their ego aside. And so
Yep.
I mean, my brothers and I was in a family business for 17 years, Justin. And so we were constantly arguing about stuff. And one way we would decide whenever it got really heated, we say, okay, fine, let's do some A/B testing.
Yep.
On our website, we would use things like Optimizely,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
and would have loved to. Back when I was a big seller, I would have loved to have had the option to do PickFu as well. But yeah, I mean, it really is great, and there's always two sides to this coin. There's the data only folks, and then there's the art folks, but it really is a mix of both
Yeah.
because you can launch some things through PickFu, identify some things that the audience, the great audiences that you guys build, give some really good feedback. You go forward. I can't imagine you're batting 1,000,
Hmm.
right, Justin? Sometimes you do have to go that next step, like Rick would say. You got to get some people who buy the
Sure.
thing and interact with it.
Yep.
Do you have any? I know you have 1,000,002 positive use cases. Do you have any where a client says, "Hey, the data said this, but when I put it out in the wild, it just didn't work," and why?
Yeah. So there's a couple things that might result in that. One, they could be asking the wrong question. So,
Sure.
like the example I
Yeah.
gave before, if you just keep asking which one looks better, then it's going to be about style, um, and that can have a big impact even on like main image, for example, right? Because
Yeah.
I know a lot of people like to their designers will come up like this really cool stylistic way to show off their product. Maybe they take the items and they fan them, and it's like, oh, this looks really cool. And then you have another option, which might be, oh, let's just lay out everything as a grid. Well, which one looks better? Okay, like the fan one probably looks better, but
Yeah.
which one would you pick in a search result? Well, I care about
Right.
like what all the things are, right? Because maybe they're
Yeah.
all different designs and I can't read them if it's in a fan. And so like this is going to win, but
Right.
you asked the wrong question, right? So that's the first mistake that might have caused that. The other one is also I mentioned before is like if you iterate your own designs without testing against competition, you've come to kind of like a local maximum of like, cool, you've got the best version of yourself, but that doesn't matter in a
How
competitive
does that compete?
marketplace. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you are a teapot of a certain brand, but like your competition is all teapots, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't test it against your competition, then you've kind of haven't validated very much. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's usually where, and that's why that customer is so adamant. He even goes as far as saying like I don't. He says he doesn't even test against his own variations because he doesn't care. Like
Right.
if I don't beat the competition, like every test he
Right.
runs is against competition. Even as he's iterating on his own designs, he
Yeah.
just puts it in against competition. So that's a different approach to it.
That's a great answer to a very difficult question. I'm going to take it one step further,
Sure.
Justin. If in your mind, if you do like this one client that you're sharing his story and how he competes, he sets up the tests with competition.
Yep.
If you take good data against the competition, what's that success rate with him when he takes it live and gets it, assuming of course that the product isn't defective, or it
Yeah.
doesn't, when people get it in their hands and they start touching and feeling it, it's not a problem. Assuming, let's set that aside, what does that success rate look like for a client like the one you're sharing?
He hasn't given us a number.
Okay,
I,
great.
I can imagine it's great because he's one of our largest customers
There's your answer.
and tests every product in that manner.
Right.
So I think our track record is, we've got a lot of customers that are doing this. We have almost every aggregator using it as well for all
Yeah.
the brand relaunches. So there is a lot of evidence, and we've talked to a lot of. We have a few case studies that we have been able to publish from customers who are willing to share. You know that a lot of sellers are kind of cagey about sharing this kind of stuff, but especially when they think it's their secret sauce, right? So
Sure. Yeah.
we love being known for that, but that just means it's a little bit harder to share a case study.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like I would make this statement, and maybe you agree or disagree, but it's got to be a best practice,
Yeah,
not only to fine tune what's good, what's the best version of yourself, but you've got to also throw it up there with your competition to get a clearer vision.
yeah,
And that's also something that's not really something that you would see in a traditional focus group. So that's unique,
yeah,
and something you can do inexpensively and quickly with the
yeah.
right audiences. That
Yeah, and we're definitely not saying that you shouldn't do other things. Like you said, you want to continue to live test, you want to continue mining your reviews for actual feedback from paid customers. This is all gathering directional feedback to see
Yeah.
if are you heading in the right direction, or maybe for diagnosing something that maybe they're not, your potential audience who hasn't bought it yet is
Yeah.
is foreseeing. Like, one of the popular use cases is kind of like this crowdsourced listing audit where we just point people to an Amazon listing and say, take a look at this thing. If you're buying dog food, what questions would you still have about it? And
Ah,
they kind of surface like really interesting things because maybe you thought you answered it, but maybe
yeah.
not clearly enough, right?
Yeah.
And so if they keep saying like, oh, how long does it last? Like, is it washable? Is it edible? It's like, oh, well, I thought I had a bullet. It's like, well, maybe that bullet's like not emphasized enough. Maybe you need a secondary image that emphasized. So these are people who maybe haven't bought it, and maybe they haven't bought it for a reason because you haven't answered all their questions yet. So they're not even writing that review yet because it hasn't even passed the test of buying it. So a lot of interesting ways that you can just gather this feedback ahead of time before getting to the point of people buying it and leaving a review.
Yeah, and we use that practice all the time. If a client comes to us and they've been selling on Amazon for a long time, what is part of our creative research team? They're reading those Q&As.
Yes.
If there's any kind of sales history, and
Yep.
we're making sure that the themes that are developing in that Q&A. But
Yeah.
what a great benefit to be able to have that before you even start your sales. Again, it's like this is a great initial interim step. As someone who's developed top selling products on Amazon, I wish I had this. I wish I could do this. I would encourage all of our listeners who are sellers or thinking about launching a product, use this great data. And we always talk too in terms of, when we're putting together sales projections for our clients or what's possible on Amazon, we look at the overall market. So you should be looking at what the competition is compared to what you're trying to present, and run it through a very, I feel like maybe you should charge more, Justin. I mean, not us,
Yeah.
right? Let's make that clear. But yeah, I think it's really, really interesting,
Yeah.
valuable information that will save big money down the road for these brands and sellers.
Yeah. I mean, just to tie back one more thought on mining the Q&A and the reviews, we did kind of a case study with Kevin King, I don't know, like a year and a half ago,
Cool.
and he had like this hand sanitizer, and it
Uh-huh.
was already selling, and he was having returns and negative reviews about certain aspects of it. I can't really remember what it was, but it might have been
Sure.
like around sizing or whatever it was. And so what he actually wanted to do was create secondary images that kind of address those up front to prevent people from misbuying it, then returning it and like leaving a negative review. And
Right.
so we worked with some creative agencies to come up with different ideas for it. And the test then you can run is kind of, what is the message that you're getting from this image, or is this, yeah, what is your takeaway from this? And so you're then using your customer feedback and using the PickFu audience to iterate on those designs to make sure, okay, this is the message I'm trying to drive home, and I'm gonna use the digital focus group to fine tune the actual creative that will go live. So that's a great way to
Brilliant.
like loop both into it.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And getting that information before you start putting those things out in the wild is so
Definitely,
valuable.
yeah,
I mean, honestly, I know it's much. I would anticipate that the success rate is much greater than 80%.
yeah,
Even if you can get 40, 50%, that is a huge win from zero, right?
yes, yes,
That's beautiful. I a couple weeks ago, before Sell and Scale, I went to Amazon Accelerate, Justin,
yep,
and one of the Amazon leaders got on stage and talked about expanding Manage Your Experiments, which is Amazon's A/B testing program. Which I'll say my own opinion, in terms of your thoughts, but they introduced being able to A/B test bullet points now,
sure,
which is nice, and they've also auto populate the winner after it hits a statistical relevance. So, what are your thoughts on manager experiments? And then, help us differentiate. I mean, you've done a great job throughout the episode, right? The use cases that you've given for a product developer speak for themselves. But
yep,
in your mind, how does what your product does differ from manager experience? And I don't want to ask if you're worried about Amazon
yeah.
continuing to add, but maybe answer that question as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think they're very complementary because I think PickFu is what you should be using as you're developing the things that are going to go live on your listing.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are issues with live testing where it's actually impacting sales. You're maybe affecting your rankings.
Right.
Maybe you don't have enough traffic, and so like you're
Yep.
having to drive traffic, and that becomes expensive. So there's a lot of issue with live testing in general. But what we like to say is that we're providing the iterative feedback to get to the point where maybe you have two or three options that win on
Yeah.
PickFu, and then you want to put them live on manager experiments to like, okay, well, this is the one that the data chooses, but you don't want to be iterating on drastically different things. And I think you made a point earlier about creatives, and like one of the objections we've heard from creative people is, well, I don't want to have people judging my work, and they feel like it constrains them. What?
Oh,
Yeah, like
you're
everything's
in
an
the
art.
wrong business, is
Or
what I
or
would
like,
say to
if your
them.
designer's like, "Oh, well, like I kinda know the right style. I know our brand. Like this is the way to go."
Sure.
But I think what's nice about PickFu is that it gives you more creative freedom to test out things. So and that's not stuff that you would want to live test, right? Because maybe you wanna try like a darker theme. Maybe you wanna try like a pink theme. Like, well, you're not gonna throw all those things on Manager Experiments, but
No, you're not going to do that live.
yeah, but maybe your target buying, based on the analytics, is
Yep.
females 18 to 35. So like you're going to target that on PickFu, and then you're going to say like, hey, do these, what do you think about like this toothbrush in pink, or this main image in this style? And so it gives you a lot of freedom to try different things, and then when you finally have that winner, put it live on Manager Experiments, and it's a perfect complement.
You're absolutely right. They're completely complementary, and if you do the job right on the PickFu platform prior to going live, then it can really be complementary because then you can
Exactly.
get some live data without in a much less costly manner, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Less negative
Yeah.
impact.
Justin, I like to ask this question to all of our guests on the Day Two podcast. Look into your crystal ball, and take a look ahead at 2023 and beyond. What kind of changes are you seeing now that may manifest themselves more in the coming years? What are you guys thinking about in PickFu, and what are some maybe potential additional either expansion or additional features or benefits that you're looking to bring into PickFu into the future?
Yeah. Obviously, marketplace expansion is something that's happening with a lot of sellers. So, selling either off Amazon on Walmart or other places, or going direct to consumer. So, we're trying to develop the product a little bit to support people in those areas. Obviously, PickFu is not specific to Amazon, but we are trying to do use cases and kind of integrations that help tie in different marketplaces. Um,
Like what? Like Walmart, like eBay. Who
Yeah,
else?
yeah, exactly. Just helping support, testing, maybe doing competitive tests within certain contexts, or kind of
Beautiful.
mock-ups, that kind of stuff. We have a mock-up generator right now for Amazon where you can take ASINs and it'll pull in generated search results, and you can kind of play with them to unify all the ratings or the number of reviews, and so that you can test it in like a playground as opposed to putting it live. So expanding that to other marketplaces. But generally for us, we're trying to develop the product to really build this muscle memory of being data driven in your decisions. And so to your point about the price, that's why you want to keep the price point low, is so that you're not overthinking testing. It should be something like, oh, well, we've got a decision, we're already debating it, let's just go throw it up on PickFu, go grab a coffee, we'll come back, like the answer's there.
Right?
And just build that habit. I mean, the customers that we have the most success with are the ones where the data driven mindset is just baked into the organization. We have one customer, DuckDuckGo, the big privacy search engine. They use PickFu for everything, literally to the point
Mm.
where they put a PickFu URL like on every decision task that they have in their project management. So it's like, okay, well, we chose this for email layout, for the feature design, for the commercial that we're going to run, and here's the data that we use to decide on it. And so there's no debate. It wasn't just some PM's call that like, oh, this is the one we're going to go with. No, they went
Right.
to their audience and actually said, this is the one that wins. And in that case, we actually have a privacy minded audience that we were able to build for them. So if there's an audience that we don't have yet, definitely reach out to us. We can build that audience. We can gather that data. And so just building that habit is kind of our goal. Like everyone shouldn't feel like they can't do it because we're not a big CPG company or we don't have the budget to test. And we're trying to bring that bar very low.
Amazing. I'm a huge fan of DuckDuckGo, by the way. I don't know if you follow me on LinkedIn, but I'm a big proponent of this antitrust legislation that's
Yep.
going through. And, I think I think Google could use some competition like
Yes.
DuckDuckGo. So thanks for doing your part. At PickFu, Justin, they're doing amazing work over there.
Oh
They
my
really
God. Yeah,
are.
they are. It's been quite a story for them.
Yeah, they absolutely are. So Justin, anything else you want to leave our viewers and listeners with at PickFu? I mean, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think that what you provide is not only unique in the industry, it's incredibly cost effective and
Yep.
such a win for brand builders. Anything else you want to leave us with today?
No, I mean, I think just get out of your own head. I don't think there's any decision that's too small
Right.
to validate. We test email subject lines or Facebook ad creatives, like anything that you're going to put out there that you think a little bit of data would help, optimize your outcome. There's a way to test it on PickFu. If you need help, we have a customer success team that's happy to help you out on live chat or jump on a strategy call. So it's incredibly easy to use, but we are a very people oriented company and very happy to work with anyone that needs help with their testing needs.
I love it. Thanks. Look, in the final analysis, in today's world, getting as much data and inputted from a curated audience most likely to buy your product is a must. It will save you money. It will save you heartache. It will create harmony in your office. Consumer research should start at product and packaging design and continue forever. PickFu is a terrific cost-effective option to gather the information you need to succeed, and knowledge is power. Justin, thank you so much for joining us today on the Day 2 podcast. Keep up the great work at PickFu, and thanks for everything you do for sellers.
Thank you, Jason.
If you're ready to start growing and protecting your brand on Amazon with a team of experienced Amazon operators, you can visit us at day2podcast.com. That's day2podcast.com. And lastly, if you know of anyone else who could gain value from this podcast, please share it with them. Thanks for listening and happy selling.